Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the original cheese grater. That's right, we got ourselves a PowerMac G5. I just realized that I've had this machine for many years. This is actually one of the first PowerPC G series machines that I've owned, and I neglected to show anybody. For a long time, this computer operated as a server for me here in my home. However, I have relegated server duties to my 1,1 Mac Pro, which is also my daily computer. So this computer is not being retired. It's going to go back into regular use. I'm going to take it to work, and I'm going to use it as a server at work to replace a Dell PowerEdge that is also a Xeon. That's a Xeon based computer, and we're going to replace it with a PowerPC. Why are we doing this? Well, truthfully, I've upgraded all of my workstations at work to Macintoshes. I use Mac Pros at work now, so it just makes sense to have a Macintosh server. So, we're just going to keep it all one brand and one operating system. So this machine is a dual 1.8 gigahertz PowerPC G5, which is actually the IBM PowerPC 750 chip. Single core on each processor, so it's just two processors. This was a 2003 or 2004 model. I think 2004 model. It's one of the original ones. They came with either a single 1.6, single 1.8, dual 1.8, dual 2, and I think there was a dual. No, I think a dual 2 gigahertz was as good as you could get with this one. There was a couple different logic board configurations. Some had 8 memory slots, some had 4 memory slots. This one is the lower end. This one only has 4 memory slots, so it supports a total of 4 gigabytes of memory, which was an insane amount of memory in 2004. Most PCs, non-Apple PCs, were shipping with 256 megs of memory, and that was considered a lot of memory back then. Most PCs of the era can't even take over 2 gigabytes of memory. If you find one that takes over 2 gigabytes of memory, that's actually pretty impressive. But this one here takes a total of 4, and it is maxed out. We'll show you inside the computer. I think this has got to be one of Apple's most beautiful industrial style designs. This was the heyday of Apple design, and I'm telling you, this is right up with the PowerMac G4 Cube and the iMac G4. I mean, it's a total aluminum case, and it's all one piece. The handles wrap around from top to bottom, forming the left side panel. The front grille goes from front to back all the way around. The door is all one piece. I mean, it is just it's an engineering marvel, and it's probably one of the best looking computers to ever come out of any company, especially at the time. And this was such a good design that Apple used this design with the Mac Pro all the way up until 2012, when they came out with the trash can, and they're actually going back to this design with the new Mac Pro being released here later in 2019. So we're going to take a look inside. We're going to show you what makes it tick, and then we're going to fire it up, and I'm going to show you just how perky this old G5 really still can be. So stay tuned. So, starting with the back of the machine, you have a modem yet. There's still 56K modem, gigabit Ethernet, Firewire 800 and 400. There was a G4 model called the Firewire 800. Was one of the first ones to have the Firewire 800, and the Firewire 800 continued all the way up until about 2008, when it was finally and quietly discontinued. This has two USB 2.0 ports, so it's the full 480 megs. The G4s, for the most part, all had 1.1. This one actually has two. Standard microphone and audio jacks. And this one here also has optical audio. You have to remember, this was a very high-end computer. This was not geared towards the home user. That was the G4. This was geared towards the professional. The sound designer, the graphics designer, the animator. So it had optical audio ports on it. And then it also has an external Bluetooth and external Wi-Fi aerial ports. So you could get these with Bluetooth, you could get these with Wi-Fi. This machine has Wi-Fi, it does not have Bluetooth. The Wi-Fi is only 802.11g. That's what they call the Airport Extreme. I do have an Airport Extreme card in it. I don't use it, but there is one in it. And then we have 4 slots here. Slot 1 is an AGP 8X slot. 8X AGP was not commonly used. It was only used on very high-end machines. There's actually not a lot of video cards that take advantage of the 8X part. This machine has a stock Apple card in it. I did have a Radeon 9600 in it. Unfortunately, it died. I was getting nothing but garbled junk out of it. So this has a stock card in it right now. This one is a DVI dual link, and it also has the Apple ADC connector, the Apple display connector, which gives you power and USB ports into your cinema display. And I do have a cinema display. I'll show you how it all works. And then you have 3 PCI slots. Slot 2, I believe, is a 33 megahertz slot, and slots 3 and 4 are both 66 megahertz. So you can put super fast PCI cards in. Has dual fans, and this thing needs all the fans it can get. A sucker gets hot. And your standard IEC power input. So as we look around on the front, it looks pretty Spartan, but it's actually not. It's actually got a lot of features on it. You just can't see them. You have 1 slot here. This is for a DVD super drive. This does have a DVD/CD burner in it. Dual layer. That was not standard. Most of these came with, the lower end models came with DVD ROMs and CD burners. I actually upgraded to one on here. Down here where the power button is, you have a headphone jack, a USB 2.0 port, and a Firewire 400 port. So connecting cameras and anything else that you could possibly want to connect to it, and stuff that you don't keep connected on a regular basis, is very easy on this machine. It's right here on the front. Now we're going to take a look at one of the most beautiful insides of a computer anyone has ever seen in their life. So, looking at the very unassuming Apple logo side panel, we don't see anything. Well, we release the latch there, and opening this machine is so easy. Wish I could do that today. We just pull this panel off, and one of the most beautiful computer insides is now displayed. There's detail in here that truthfully doesn't even need to be here, but it's here. The first thing you notice is how open it is. It's a very open machine. CD drive, optical drive right here. Now this is a ATA 133 drive, better known as parallel ATA. They actually used the parallel ATA for several years, even after this machine. My Mac Pros all use parallel ATA optical drives. 2 hard drive bays right here. These were the first Macintoshes to use SATA. This is SATA 1. It's I believe 1.5 gigabytes per second. I have 2 drives installed. One is a boot drive and another one is a storage drive. For a server, truthfully, I should have more drives in it, but it's just a small file server, you know. And then we have this beautiful piece of acrylic plastic here. And people are like, well, that's dumb. What's that there for? This is actually serves a very, very unique purpose. You see, the cutouts are actually air deflectors. There's fans here, fan here, fans here. There's also another fan up top here, which actually blows not only air over it draws air across the optical drive, which doesn't get hot. It also keeps the hard drives cool. And there's yet one more fan. There's a squirrel cage fan in the very back of the computer. You can't see it. It actually blows air on the back of the motherboard. There's a Northbridge, a heat-sinked Northbridge chipset on the back of the board that gets very hot. And basically the Northbridge takes care of 90% of the I/O in this machine, so it's a very busy chip. So there's actually a small squirrel cage fan that blows air in the back of the computer. So the power supply is down here in the very bottom. It does not have any fans in it. It really doesn't get too hot. But these air deflectors are actually necessary to direct the proper amount of air through this section, in which, as you can guess, this is where these are the processors. Now, you're thinking, well, these can't be that big. They are. These things are absolutely freaking huge. The processor is only this big. But the heatsink is about the size of Montana. And just think, there's 2 of them in here. So, getting in here is simple. You just pull this off. There's a little notch up here that holds this panel in. And then pull it off. And there's your computer. Very, very elegant design. So we're going to take a look. Now it's kind of hard to see, but there's 4 memory slots, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're actually hidden behind these fans. And Apple thought of everything with this machine. You just pull this fan assembly out, and then you have access to everything. You can see the memory now. So later models, they have 4 slots on the bottom, 4 slots on the top. This is, like I said, this is a lower end model. So I only have the 4 slots. And then there's a quick connect on the fan. You don't even have to worry about wires or nothing. You just push it back in. Voila. There's plugged in. Dual G5 processors. I am not going to take this apart. It's a pain in the butt. Each processor takes up an entire section here. And the heat sinks are absolutely massive. This machine puts out so much heat. The rumor is that if you have a smallish or medium-sized room, you probably wouldn't have to run your heat in the winter. This machine gets so warm when it's really, really working. So, this particular machine actually very rarely gets very hot because it's just a server, so it doesn't really do a lot of heavy work. Here we have the PCI slots. And they're very hard to see, but you can see them in there. There's a video card here, and for the life of me, I can't remember which card this is. I got this from Greg Rutke. It's not a dead stock card, it is an upgraded card. But there's also 3 full-length, full 64-bit PCI slots. And then up top, you'll see there's two hard drives, and they're labeled A and B, and there's no rhyme or reason, to which drive's where. This one is my boot drive, and the one up top is a 1 terabyte hard drive. And then over here is just an optical drive, which actually comes out very easily. You just pop these little tabs here, no click, and drive slides right out. Replacement was very easy, very fast. Same thing with the hard drives. The hard drives, you just slip this thing, and then this drive here sticks for some reason. I don't know why, but normally it just slides right out. So just take my word for it. So, and then down here on the bottom, this is your model identifier, and of course your serial number and everything. Now this particular machine is a G5 1.8 gigahertz dual processor. It originally came with 512 megs of DDR1 at 400 megahertz, an 80 gig hard drive, a super drive, a G5200 video card, 56K, and OS 10. These machines do not run OS 9 natively. They can run classic, but they can't run OS 9 natively. To my knowledge, there's no way to make this machine run OS 9. It would be nice. It would fly. Oh my God, would it ever fly? But that's the inside of the G5. I mean, it's just a very elegant design. They took a lot of time when they designed this. I mean, they did not have to add this cover, with the machine. This is aluminum with the machine G5 emblems and everything. I mean, it's just unreal. And then the machine has to have this air deflector, and I'll show you why. Because without an air deflector, let's plug it in here as soon as I find a power cord. Story of my life. I'm always losing my cords. I found an ADC cord. Hey, juice. There we go. So the biggest complaint people have is how loud this machine is. This machine is not loud at all. I'm going to boot it up, and we're going to take a listen to it. And this was without the cover on it. I don't hear anything. Well, here's where things get tricky. Now, like I said, this air deflector is required. The machine will run without it, but there's one caveat. If you take this air deflector out, all the fans ramp up to max, and then it gets loud. And there's also a little red light in here that pops on. It lets you know that there's an error. There's actually a switch in here that knows when there's an air deflector installed. And when the air deflector is not installed, it will ramp the fans up to maximize cooling. Those G5 processors, they can get very hot when they're under load. It can be quite insane. So, but we're going to put the cover on. We're going to boot her up normally. And just show you a couple of specs on it. And like I said, it's a server. It's running OS 10.11 server. So it's not a normal use OS, as most people would think. And putting the cover back on is as simple as 1, 2, 3. So give me a couple minutes. We'll come right back and we'll boot her up. All right. So what you see before you is a 23-inch Apple Cinema display, Apple Cinema HD display. Technically, it's not HD, but in Apple's book it is. So this is the ADC display. This is the display that originally would have been shipped when the computer first came out. There was, however, a newer version to match very, very shortly after these started shipping. I do have them, however, I don't have power supplies for them, which creates a small problem because then I have no way of powering them. This display is actually powered off the computer, which is perfect because then I don't have to have external power supply or anything like that. And then I do have an external power supply for this monitor if I use it on a DVI computer, like a PC. That was like $150 just on its own. So this is a decent monitor. It's not the best. I mean, it was great in 2004 or 2003 when I think it first came out. I mean, it was beautiful. It was huge. It was expensive. But right now I'm going to show you the #1 best feature of this display. So down here in the bottom we have 3 buttons, and let me zoom in on this a little bit. They're very, very hard to see. This is a early model display. This would have shipped with the very early G4s. I actually have 2 of these displays. There's another model that has touch sensitive buttons on here, right here on the front. I actually prefer that one better. Oh, it's so cool. This one has 3 buttons on the bottom. And you can barely, even normally, even without the camera, you can barely see. There's a brightness up and down, and power. So most people would think, oh, well, the power button, you know, that's just for the monitor. It's not. Hitting that power button will power everything up. Which is actually very convenient because you don't necessarily have to have your computer right in front of you. On the back of this monitor is also 2 USB ports. So you could hook your keyboard, mouse, whatever, right into the back of this thing. I mean, it's a very ideal situation. So, and like I said, we're running OS 10.4, I think 0.8 server on here, which is an extremely robust and very, very stable server system. So, normally this is exactly what the computer sits at. It just sits on this screen 99% of its life until somebody logs into it, like I'm going to do. And this is fully configured. You know, this is exactly, this is exactly how I left it when I sort of retired it. So, I mean, I've got this thing customized the exact way I want. But if we go into About This Mac, we'll take a look here. And as you see, oh, I'm sorry, we are running 10.4.11, which is the latest version of Tiger, as it's called. You see we have the dual 1.8 G5, 4 gigs of memory. It just shows you your startup disk. These older ones didn't tell you a lot in the initial About This Mac. But if we go into more info, we see a lot more information. So, as you see, this is called a PowerMac 7,3. It has a PowerPC G5. It's version 2.2, which means that, there were some older versions. This has revised processors. There's 2 CPUs right here. Not 2 cores, 2 physical CPUs. There was actually a dual core, dual CPU version of this machine. They are actually in very high demand. Most of those had liquid cooling in them because they ran so blooming hot. So, And a lot of them have failed and unfortunately destroyed the machines. There's a 512K of level 2 cache per CPU, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but it was a lot back then. 4 gigs of memory, and 900 megahertz system bus. So the system bus is running just about half of the speed of the processor. So it's pretty damn quick. So, and you know, we can go down, we can take a look. There's a Sony DVD RW. Has a TI TAS 3004 audio chip. Nothing to write home about, just your standard audio. This machine does not have a Bluetooth card installed. There was a Bluetooth 2.0 card you could install. And go down here to FireWire. It says up to 800 megs. Oh, this is a Radeon 9600. I'm sorry. Then I don't remember which one I had in here before. Okay, so this is a 64 meg version of the Radeon 9600. This was actually one of the better video cards you could get. The original video card only had, I think, 32 megs of memory on it. It was kind of a dog. You can see here, here's the memory configuration. This is maxed. This is as good as it gets with this machine. You cannot use 2 gigabyte DIMMs in it. It will only recognize one gig of each. And as you see, there's no PCI cards installed. The serial ATA. We can take a look down here. This is the 1 terabyte hard drive. And yes, I know the smart status says it's failing. It's been failing for years, and I mean years. Like 5 years. I think there's an error in the drive somewhere in the smart system, because I've never had an issue with the drive. But I use it only as a data storage drive, and I have backup, so the data. So if it fails, it fails. It's one of those no big deals. I can't install OS 10 on it because of the smart status showing fail. But, you know. So, as you see, I've got several partitions on here, which are all empty at the moment because I took everything off this drive. And then you can see the boot drive is simply, it's only 160 gigabytes, which is still double the size of what was in it when it was new. So, it's an old Mac store drive. It's very slow, but it's a server. You know, I'm not really into speed. And the thing maxes out at 1.5 gigs per second, because it's only SATA 1. So, I have tried installing an SSD in this machine many times, and I can get the computer to recognize the SSD, but I can't get the computer to boot off the SSD. So, it's kind of a moot point, you know. And truthfully, I don't think an SSD would speed the machine up too terribly much. It's actually pretty peppy as it is. It runs OS 10.4 beautiful. Going to USB, you can see it's just regular USB, you know. But it does show a USB monitor, which I always thought was kind of cool. And when you click on it, it tells you all about the monitor. And the monitor is actually made by LG Electronics. So, which is pretty nice. And, you know, there's an airport card in here. You know, we could pull this up. It's an Airport Extreme. I don't use it. Truthfully, I don't even know why I have it in there, but I don't have anything else to use it in, so I just leave it alone. It's there if I need it. You know, when you're dealing with a server, sometimes it's nice to have a backup. You know, like my Mac Pro's got 2 Ethernet ports. If something happens to one, I have another one to go to. This doesn't. This only has 1 port, so it's nice to have the airport card just in case I need a backup, in case, you know, a router goes down or something, you know. And then we can go into modems, and it's just going to pop up the standard, hey, it's got a USB 56K modem. Yep, microdash USB 56K modem. So, nothing, you know, it's nothing to write home about. It's just your standard run-of-the-mill PowerMac G5. You know, I don't have any fancy benchmarks or anything like that to show you on this machine. I just thought, it's like, hey, you know, I should show everybody this nice, beautiful cheese grater before it goes to get all dusty and dirty at work. So, and there she is. Yes, there's some discolor. There used to be a little piece of paper taped on the front here. The company, I got like 8 of these at one time, and I used several of them to make one machine, and that was the 1.8 that's here. Most of them were actually single processor 1.6 machines. This was one of the few 1.8s, and this one was actually used as a server. You know, I've given several of them away to friends, and you know, this was the one I decided to keep, and it was actually not the fastest. I did have a couple of 2.0 gigahertz ones, and if I would have known more about them at the time, I would have kept one of those, because those can take more memory. But I've been very happy with it. It's never left me down. It's never given me a problem. I mean, it boots up every flipping time. You know, so how can you complain? So, and then we can go up here, and we can log in, log off. And there we go. We're stuck at our login screen again, which is usually where it sits. If you leave it sit for more than a couple of minutes, it'll log you off automatically anyway. So, and we can shut it down from here. And we gotta, because it's a server, we gotta force it to shut down, because there's, you know, possible users logged in. I don't think I have it on the network. And there you go. So that was PowerMac G5. Truth be told, you're probably never going to see this one again, because like I said, it's going to be put into server use. But you know, it's a very beautiful machine. You know, it's very pleasing to look at. You know, it's not gaudy like a PC and gross looking. It's a very stylish machine. You know, and the Mac Pros are the same way. They're very stylish looking machines. They look as good as they run. You know, and Steve Jobs was big, not just on function, but he wanted the form with the function. You don't get that on a PC. You do not get the form with the function. You just get the function. And sometimes you're lucky if you even get that. You know, sometimes you just have a gaudy box that doesn't do squat. You know. So, but there it is, the PowerMac G5. I hope you enjoyed it. I've become a pretty good expert on these machines since I've owned this one. I learned a lot, believe it or not, on the G5. And if anybody has any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll be happy to see them. So, this is Mike at Mike's Mac Shack. Check me out next time.